Where to? Where could all this be going? Well, so on the one hand, there's the JP Morgan story. There's the, we're all going to disappear overnight. I don't personally subscribe to that. I think there is vastly more interesting stuff to be done, that technology allows us to do, removing the boring work, covering more ground than we could, the point about leverage, serving new markets, new customers, being proper business partners to your clients. New entrants, whether in the consumer, but also in the business-to-business space. This whole thing around regulatory compliance, the ambience, and being able to comply with regulations as they, how do I make myself compliant but remain compliant? And I know that I'm compliant as opposed to, waiting for the call that says I'm no longer compliant, I've had a breach. And obviously the access to justice issue. So I my view is there is vastly more opportunity created by digital than there is, disruption and risk. And the example that I always use is this brilliant law firm, bank, which I can't name, technology company combination who work together on the Dodd-Frank rules and codify something like 1,500 different sets of laws into an ambient tool that is checking something called collateral enforceability, which someone in here, many people in here will probably understand, I don't, but is working ambiently, real time inside of the bank as transactions go through the system. And billions and billions of fact patterns being processed in near real time. And that's a collaboration between a law firm, a bank, and a technology company. Brilliant. That, for me, that's a little example of the future of law. One big drawback. That law firm who designed that sold it to one bank. One bank. Crazy. So, but there is the opportunity to solve that for the industry. And that's one of the things that technology allows you to do. So, on a bigger picture, we talk about this sort of journey that we're all on. And the examples I've given you are sort of, along that way. So if you imagine, this is very simplistic and generalized, but if you imagine the world we're all coming from, which is all sort of very one-to-one and human and reactive, right now, I think a lot of the effort and time is going into this zone around automation for efficiency. It's the agenda of clock and so forth. And the examples that we see released from JP Morgan and many, many others is all about automation. But really where the fun starts, potentially, is this world of digital, where actually you start to see technology disintermediating between the recipient and the provider of those services. Again, whether you're in-house or outside. And compliance HR is just one example of that. And then all the way along, whatever it ends up being called, is this world of ambience, of algorithmic, of that example of Dodd-Frank I gave. So I think we are on this journey. And I think, whilst I can't predict what the world over in algorithmic looks like, because there is a sort of school of thought that says actually if one person builds that Dodd-Frank algorithm, then actually there's no room in the market for anyone else, or maybe one or two others. What's the implication of that? But certainly there's a hell of a lot of road still to come in that digital world, that client experience world. Some of those examples I gave before. But that's going to require new operating models, and this is, I apologize, I tried to get the Neota logic start off here. It's a grouped image, so apologies, it comes from one of our slide decks. But if you're sitting in a law department today, you may already have thought about all of this, but if not, looking across the top, what's the best division of work? How do I design my service from the client backwards? And who should be doing the work? And how do I design my infrastructure from a technology standpoint from the bottom up? What are the foundational systems I need? What are the operational systems? It's the stuff that we were talking about that actually is the focus, I think, of a lot of activity at the moment. And then what are these sort of interesting new opportunities, tools, and how can I deploy those? And I don't know, they're called substantive systems in here. I'm not quite sure what that means. But another way of looking at that world is this, and I have to credit a bunch called Wavelength Law. Are you familiar with Wavelength Law? Who, they're a law firm, small law firm, but they also do legal engineering. And I quite, if you could read that, I quite like this diagram as a reflection of the group, what's in grey up at the top here, which is about technologies that could be deployed between the interface between the legal function or the law firm and your clients. So, high Q, and we're familiar with lots of names within each one of these boxes. Capabilities you build around, extraction, reasoning, document automation, visualization, and then the data layer that sits underneath that. And I think you'll start to see more and more, legal services delivery stacks like this emerging that potentially will be part of a roll-up I mentioned before that will enable all of that to happen. Quick thing about data. There's obviously a huge amount of publicity around big data, machine learning, how that's going to solve our way out of the world we're in. I don't subscribe to that at all. We don't. The big issue today is that is just a myth. And a lot of the work that's going on around automation and tools like ours are actually looking to solve that by creating the structured data in the first place. So I just caution anyone to be carried away with we've got a data lake that we can apply some great machine learning tools to and it's going to solve our business. Actually, the volume, the effort required in curation and the nature of the data that's actually out there, the unstructured, sort of messy nature of the data, means that will be, in my opinion, a fruitless task. So just be very cautious about that. There was an article in the New York Times just yesterday, just exactly about this. So we need to create the structured data first. And of course, there'll be loads of this stuff, loads of inflated expectations and hype cycles, and lots of cynics and naysayers who I don't tend to listen to. So a couple of quick thoughts on what you could do, and just sort of a couple more minutes on what to do. Now, I've talked a lot about technology, but this is not a technology, digital transformation is not a technology-related thing. It's actually a business thing. So, if I'm sitting in your shoes looking at how do I start on this journey, I would start by thinking about, how do I get clear about what my context is, the context of the businesses I serve, the context of the organization I have. How do I identify my strategic imperatives as a legal function or as an outside counsel, as a law firm? How do I build competencies around process? And the culture, this idea about culture, being curious, being prepared to take risks, and creating the room inside your organization to be able to do that. It's incredibly hard today, given how lean things are and how busy people are. But if you don't do that, the technology, the digital, whatever you do will fail. Because I see many examples, sometimes with our technology, of companies who buy the technology and then spend the next 18 months trying to re-engineer their business to accept the technology. And I would argue, do it the other way around. I mean, there is sometimes a case for starting with the technology, but that doesn't always end well for us. So, this concept of build the business infrastructure and the clarity of direction and vision and the competencies you need to accept digital into your business, don't start with, let's buy a bunch of tools. But if you are going to buy a bunch of tools, spend the time to understand them. Feel free to come and talk to us. There are lots of commentators out there. Find the problem to solve. I mean, a lot of this is sort of very, very basic stuff. Analyze the ROI. It's just the thing it says there, that the I is uncertain and the R is speculative. Again, it's that idea of, you are not going to, no one's ever been through an IT project that has gone according to plan. So build the infrastructure, the oxygen into your business that allows you to fail. And for R, I to end up being over here, and R to end up perhaps being over here, but actually having learned a bunch of lessons along the way that then puts you in a good footing for the next stage. And think about process, obviously, before technology. And then finally, very finally, have fun. There's a chap from Transgrid, I think he's National Grid, I think he was from, who was saying, I get all my panel firms to not only tell me about what technologies, what they're seeing in the market around technologies, but I get them to show me the technologies they're using on my matters. If they can't do that, out the door. And you guys can, particularly I'm talking the outside community here, the corporate community, you can have a lot of fun with that, and put pressure into the system to force that sort of innovation to keep happening.